Welcome to the Heartbit podcast, where we delve into the heart of Bitcoin and uncover the sweet spot for enthusiasts worldwide. I'm Dani, your fellow Bitcoin explorer, and today we will be joined by Robin Seyr, a Bitcoin podcast host who has been in the scene for quite a while now. He's had the opportunity to interview a lot of people, and today we're going to talk with him a little bit about his journey. How are you?
Hi, Dani. I'm really good. It's amazing to be on the other side. Like I have a daily Bitcoin podcast show, as you mentioned, and I usually interview every day. Tomorrow I have a weird schedule with three podcasts in a row with like half an hour in between. So this will be challenging for me. But usually, I'm doing every day a podcast interview, and I have people on from like Jeff Booth, Natalie Brunell, even Gary Cardone recently, the bigger guys on social media, but also the everyday kind of a guy. Like just like if someone replies to my tweet and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting reply. I don't do a lot of checking. I'm like DMing him like, hey, do you want to be on my show? And let's record. And these are usually the episodes that I love the most because there I get to know someone new. There I get to know someone that is not on every podcast because like a Jeff Booth, Michael Saylor, Natalie Brunell, they're on every podcast and I heard them like 20, 30 times saying Bitcoin stuff. And so I love to have the new guys, the someone that was never on a podcast. I think I made now 106 episodes and I think 10 or 15 of those were the first time ever on a podcast with me. So this is really cool to have completely new faces in the Bitcoin community to spread the world a little bit further.
That's really interesting you mentioned that because over the weekend, I was thinking that I was interested in interviewing people who maybe don't know that much about Bitcoin, like the actual users, to get a better sense of where people get lost, where people get apprehension, and kind of like to basically orange pill people on camera. So,
And you have to get them as and when you explain Bitcoin, like if you get Bitcoin explained by someone, you want someone that is relatable to you. And this is where we have to get really diverse with our guests. If we have someone sitting in India, someone that is Indian and explains him Bitcoin is way better and way more relatable as some American guy.
mhm, definitely.
So like I'm trying to just have the widest range of people on my Bitcoin show that is possible. I cannot do more than one a day. Like one a day is my upper limit. It's maybe too much, but I'm trying to keep up with the schedule that I set myself. But it's a really cool thing to do, yeah. And we need more people in the Bitcoin scene. Like we are so small and so early. Everyone that starts a podcast, everyone that starts speaking about it, every voice is so important that speaks up.
Earlier, you said 106 episodes, but this morning I was looking at your YouTube again and it said exactly 100 episodes. I was wondering if maybe some have not become available, but because of that, I was thinking of celebrating this as like your 100 episode retrospect since it like kind of coincided and with like you being interviewed.
There's two aspects to it. First of all, like I pre-record stuff. So like I have episodes that are not have been uploaded till now, but there is also the aspect where I already deleted two episodes, which is not because of me, it's just because they said, oh, they don't want it anymore. Someone said it right after I released it, and then I just took it off because he said he's involved in investment stuff and in investment series, and he does not want to have anything that gets in the way of getting an investment right now. I don't like if someone says like delete my episodes, I'm deleting, of course. Like I don't care. Like the my shows are for the guest. And someone also wanted to delete it because he wants to be more private. And I respect that decision, and it's totally fine. I mean, the later one was on for like a few months, so I looked at the statistics. This episode did not get any views in the last week anyway. So, but still, like I respect this. So there could be a difference there. But the bigger difference is because I record and pre-record everything, and then release it like a week later, 2 weeks later, a few days later, depending on how far I'm ahead in the schedule. And yeah, I released my 100th episode, I think on Saturday. So today was my 102nd release or 101st release, something like that. So we can definitely make a 100 episode retrospect because we are right around the 100 episodes right now.
Yeah, I think it's still a great opportunity to celebrate the 100 episodes and like the trajectory and the path, like the things you have learned and what you've discovered on the way. So I have a couple questions related to that. The first question I had is, who has taught you the most in these 100 episodes? Who taught you the most?
Oh, wow, that's really hard to pinpoint.
Mhm.
Uh,
You can pick a
there
couple.
there are a lot of different that learned me a lot. I think Jeff Booth was the most influential on my life, honestly, because I interviewed him in a very interesting point in my life where I just was in the transition to being from part-time working in sales for an IT company and doing part-time the podcast to going full-time to podcast and doing only this.
Mhm.
And he said, like I did not speak with him about that, but he just said in the end of the podcast, even like live while we were recording, he said that you benefit massively if you spend all your time right now in Bitcoin, not only your financial energy, but also your time in Bitcoin. And he explained it himself that even though he was invested in Bitcoin, he spent all this time with this fiat system, money and stuff like that, in the fiat system where he was involved. And he one time stood up and was like, I'm like benefiting the fiat system. He is speaking about Bitcoin. He had this book already out, but he was not really outspoken, not really spending his time in Bitcoin. And then he decided to do the what is it called, ego dev capital, and spending his time really on Bitcoin. And this kind of was one of the major reasons why I also like took the step. Like there's a lot of reasons why I took the step, and I wanted to took the step and take the step this year. I had it planned way later. Like I wanted to do it like September, October, at this range, but I ended up doing it already in February, which was a surprise to me because things were just happening way faster than I expected. This is also part to 21 Bitcoin believing in me and sponsoring me really early on, making it happen for me the transition. So I think this was I think I did not learn the most from Jeff Booth, but from Jeff Booth, they had the most influence on my life, maybe. The most learnings, I think this is really hard to pinpoint. It's a really good question. I did not thought about it, and actually, I'm planning on doing a book on my podcast episodes because I'm interviewing so many people. A book that is like what Bitcoin taught me, where I also have the learnings from my guests in. So if I started with the book, I probably had a better answer already.
Mhm.
But this is an interesting thought about. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question that is similar, but I was curious if you would say the same person or not, because the other question I had is who surprised you the most? Or what surprised you the most? Who gave you the piece of information that was like the most unexpected, or who came on your show and was the most unexpected?
Those are definitely, this is definitely not Jeff Booth because I knew him before quite good, and this is what I was talking a little bit earlier because the bigger guys, you already know what they're saying. Like when you ask Jeff Booth a question, you kind of know where he's going, like what he's saying and stuff like this because he's on so many podcasts. But one that was really fascinating for me was Luke, that I interviewed recently as a basketball a player, professional one. And he was just really good in speaking about Bitcoin and about his passion. And it was his first podcast. It was fascinating for me because if you interview people that are the first time on a podcast, it's also a little bit like a gamble because they could be really nervous. They could be really, yeah, it's the first time. Maybe they are not as good in articulating things as there might be like a Michael Saylor, Jeff Booth, and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a gamble. So the host, like me, has to do more work on making them comfortable. If someone is completely new, I usually spend more time before the podcast, like 10, 15, sometimes in 20 minutes speaking with them, and then just starting the recording and keeping it really friendly. With Jeff Booth, I was like, yeah, he's in, press record, let's go. Like the,
Definitely taking notes from your techniques.
yes, I think a host has the job of getting the best out of the guest. Like this is like getting like it's easy to get the best out of like a really good speaker because he's prepared, like he did it so many times, he know what he's doing. He already said the things he want to say like 50 times before he says it on the podcast, or maybe like 100 times. And someone that is new, like I had one guy on that I will not say his name, but he was on and we took two sets. Like we did the podcast like 30 hours. 30 minutes, half an hour. And then we said, okay, let's delete it. Let's do the same thing just over again. And then we did 45 minutes. And it was actually a really good performing podcast because he had extremely good things to say, and I was loving his opinion. And it was amazing to see when people are coming over this hurdle of, oh, I can actually freely speak. I can what is in my mind. I can actually pronounce and put it into the world, and it is something that resonates with people. And every episode is resonating with other people. Like sometimes I think like, oh, this episode is not as interesting, and then it performs really good because I'm just one person. Maybe the episode or the guest was not as interesting for me personally, but it could be really interesting for someone listening. So I don't try to judge my own episodes or my own guests, and I just try to do like 1 hour of preparation before the guest comes on. So I'm prepared what his life is all about, what he's doing. Obviously, with people that are more on the internet, it's easier because you find stuff. If someone is not active, then it's really hard to find stuff. And
Yeah.
he only has 200 followers and he is not doing a lot. But even those I have on, and those are the most cool, the most amazing episodes usually. As with Luke, it's not released till now, but probably when this is released, it will be released. So it was really really cool to just like talk with random people, and yeah, get the interesting, the new point of views of Bitcoin out.
Yeah, because I do feel like there's been a shift in society because before, like, it would maybe be uncomfortable to talk about Bitcoin in certain social environments, or if you brought it up, they make all those memes about bringing it up at the family table and all that stuff. But like now, I feel it's like, even in my own social environment, I'm okay talking about Bitcoin, talking about working in Bitcoin because everything has become more like formal and it's becoming normalized every day. More,
We
more.
are growing up. This is the thing that we I see more and more in the Bitcoin world. We are actually growing up, and the Bitcoin community is now ready to be in all the get-togethers, in all the restaurant discussions, in all the bar discussions. Like everybody knows Bitcoin, and those FUDs that we usually have to deal with, they are getting smaller. Like the environment FUD is, at least in my Austrian environment, is still big, but it gets smaller and people are like, oh yes, it uses a lot of energy, but people are like kind of, yeah, we have to deal with it. but it's like they don't understand why Bitcoin is useful, so they still have those thoughts in their head. But it gets better, like it gets way better. And also when I see it in the family, when I first adopted it in 4 years ago, I was the only one in Bitcoin. I was the only weird one in Bitcoin. And it was for the family totally okay, and they knew it because I was also the only one that was investing in stocks that were unusual. And I always put like big bets on stocks. I had a lot of money, like a lot of my money, not a lot of money, but a lot of like a high percentage of my money in Tesla stock before I had it in Bitcoin. So that they were like, oh, Robin, he's like having really high risk stocks and really high risk bets, which I always disagreed with. But with Tesla, they kind of were right. I mean, I made a huge amount of money because I was lucky, honestly, because I did not really understand the stock market back then. But this pushed me to Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, so like my environment reacted really good to Bitcoin. Like nobody like was like, yeah, Bitcoin. But this is also like this is a point where I'm always really healthy. I'm trying to look out for myself. And so I'm looked up to in my family sometimes. And this is where I'm really passionate about. Like when you are in your life really good, like you are kind and nice to everyone, and you're happy with your life and you're doing good, this is the best orange pilling you can do. People driving towards you. Like if you are just doing really good in life, you're happy, you're giving to society, you're a kind, nice person, and then you are also the Bitcoiner, then they're not as this Bitcoin thing, and they're kind of lowering their barriers, and they're more open to the idea of it. And that's why I'm like, when someone asks me what's the best orange billing strategy, be really good in life, be kind, be the town hero, the village hero. Like whatever you're doing, try to give back to people, uh, live healthy, work out, look like you're a healthy, happy human being, and be a healthy, happy human being. And I'm trying my best to be that person. I'm not always perfect, but I'm trying to do it. And I think people notice that, like people realize that, oh, he's actually genuinely happy or not. Like if people are happy, they notice that. And that's the best orange pilling, because when then Bitcoin comes up in their head and they are curious about it, they are taking your advice seriously. If you are not good in your life, you're like in another good of place on in your life, they're not as open or welcoming your opinion, even though the opinion is as valid from any other person.
No, I hear what you're saying because I was basically debating with the same idea recently, which is that, the best way to like I'm a very private person, so it's difficult for me to create this show was a big like personal obstacle for me to like commit to being in the public eye. And
Mm.
with that also comes like the more I would the more I share my lifestyle with the community, the more clear like I could be sharing those concepts. But it's a huge struggle for me, like how much do you reveal of yourself and how much do you keep private? But at the same time, like if you reveal, because there's also that whole thing, because in social media, like there's so much like sharing and envy. I don't like how like to create FOMO in other people. That causes me unrest. But what you're talking about is so much more elegant, because it's like the same ideas that I was debating, but it's not about the jealousy and the envy. It's about like you are like you have a high quality of life, which like reaffirms that Bitcoin is a good thing for yourself and for society, because it allows you to have a happy, stable, like long time preference, calm life. And
Yeah, definitely. If
so I like how you worded it, because I was really struggling with this concept. the last couple of weeks.
And people love it when you share your life, by the way. Like this off topic, but as you mentioned it, like um if you share stuff on your podcast, and I in the first episodes I did not share a lot about me, but I tried to share more about my story also. I mean, I always make the episodes about my guests,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's really cool to like get in some personal stories and get in like I have people watch my episode every day, and they are curious about the guests, of course, but they are really also curious about myself. So if you share small stories of yourself, like I shared a lot that I'm a swimmer, I shared a lot about that. I shared a lot about my personal investment story, how I did also shit coins and then came back to Bitcoin only. I shared some of those stories, and this is the stuff that actually people remember. And I had people on that watch also a lot of my podcasts before. Those people that are the first time on a podcast, they wanted to prepare themselves and they like watched the episodes. And when I went with them on the podcast, then, for example, as with Luke or with other people, I had the feeling that I am already best friends with them because they knew so much about me, and it felt like it's sharing stuff online. Like for me, it's like you have to make either decision. Either you are completely off grid, your face is not shown, you don't show yourself, or you're online. Once you're online, you people will know you. People, if someone wants to find out who's Dani and is she related to Bitcoin, they are now able to do it because you put yourself out there. And then I always recommend like share what you're comfortable sharing, and the more you share, the better or relationship you can make with your yeah viewers, because it's like with in real life also, like if you have friends, the best friends know the most of you because you share the most with them, and it's the same way in social media. The only important thing with that is you have to set like your like complete boundaries where like, okay, this is where I'm not talking about stuff like that. For example, I talk a lot about my girlfriend also in the podcast show, but I never share her name. I never share other stuff about her because I want to respect her privacy. And even though she's herself online, she has more YouTube subscribers than me. But I don't want to dox her. I don't want to make this connection. So I just talk my girlfriend. So I
Mhm.
therefore need to say her name. So like is there's things where you just have to be like, okay, these are the things that I want to keep private. This is what I not want to share, and the rest I'm open and I'm feeling like I mean this is up to you how you do it, but this is how I've done it, and I think having this distance remote relationship with the viewers is really cool, and I get the comments section I love because they're getting better and better because the relationship is getting better and better. Besides the few scam comments that I have to delete all every day, I think there's some, I don't even know the names. There's an AM something token going on that I have to delete now. I'm uploading a video. First 5 minutes, I have 30 comments of that bot things. It's quite annoying, but I try to keep my comment sections clean.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
used to work for Tony Vase, and the spammers are always commenting. Eventually, we gave up on like micromanaging all the scams because it was like every week it was a different coin and a different scammer. I did actually end up writing code for a bot to help manage the comments. I have it
Mhm.
archived somewhere. So if one day you need it, I will hook you up with it.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it would be the job of Twitter, YouTube to deal with the stuff. Uh,
Yes.
I feel like on Twitter, even though I have the more followings and I get more comments there, it's better. I feel like I don't get a lot of it. Maybe I'm not seeing it. I don't know. I have a quality filter in Twitter
Mhm.
activated, so maybe in Twitter it's better. But in YouTube, I activated that I see all the comments. So like yeah, it's weird, but yeah, definitely. I'm really passionate about sharing my stuff online. I'm also seeing like the podcast that I do now is not a short-term thing. Like I will do my podcast till I die, because it's fascinating for me to having this out out this yeah this broadcasting of my current beliefs, of my current friends and circles that I have, and document it. I see it also. This I saw it in a random speech and this resonated a lot with me. Has nothing to do with Bitcoin, by the way, but this resonated a lot with me. He said like he's really passionate about content creation because he thinks about his grandson that is now able to watch his grandpa, how he was in life, what he did, what he did, and stuff like that. And this is something where I'm like, this is really cool. How much money would I give to see my grandpa not only on a picture? Like how amazing would be to have like 2 hours of podcast with him where he explained his worldviews. This would be something I would actually pay a lot of money to get. And putting this out and showing if a grandson is interested in it, he can look at it. That's amazing.
Well, I already have a daughter, so I can resonate very much with your idea. I have more questions about the actual 100 episodes, but I do want to talk about, like, since we're on the personal ground, I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Like, where do you live? Do you go to your local conferences? Do you interact with the community in like real life? How do you feel about that stuff?
I'm trying to be more physical involved also in Bitcoin, if I can say it like that. I was last year in Prague. I will be this year in Prague. Prague is amazing because it's such a huge conference, so everybody is there. Everybody that is really involved in Bitcoin will be there. I'm also moving to Vienna. I'm probably going to meetups also there. Right now, I'm close, like 1 2 hours away from Vienna in a smaller city, which I have not been to any meetups. There are meetups some time, but not a lot. And every time it was, I did not have time. So it was like a weird thing. And I'm only 1 year now here. And before I was in Munich. In Munich, I was also at some meetups, which I love, honestly. Getting to know Bitcoiners like actually in person. It's a different feeling. I always encourage everybody to go to conferences. If you never have been to a conference or a meetup, go to something like that. Maybe start with a local meetup. There is no matter where you live, in like 1 2 hours reach, there's some Bitcoin meetup if you look it up. Like there's like I don't know if there's any place on the world where there's no Bitcoin meetup in not 2 hours range or something like that. You probably find it somehow. So I encourage everybody to go to Bitcoin meetups, to local meetups, and meet people there. And then, if you're ready, go to a Bitcoin Prague conference. It can be intimidating if there are like 8,000 people there, but 8,000 people is also good because nobody will notice you anyways. Like you can go in there and be basically a ghost because if nobody knows you, you will be unnoticed because there are so many faces around. So you can really go to the booths, check out the companies. You can meet people. I got a picture with Michael Saylor and Seyfried Moose on the same picture with me, which looks hilarious because I'm 2 meters and Michael Saylor is small and Seyfried is even smaller than him, which looks like kind of like that. Uh, so I'm loving this picture. So you.
We meet Jimmy Song. Jimmy Song is super tall. He doesn't look it, but
Oh.
he's super tall.
I've never met Jimmy Song in real life. I think I don't know if he was not at Bitcoin Prague last year or I just missed him. But he's tall, you say?
Yeah. So you'll get the opposite effect when you take a photo with it. Well, you will be even.
Yeah.
So the next big, I do agree with the conferences. One thing that also happens is that you can be a ghost, but also you'll find other people who will be open to talking to you. And what you will quickly discover is that most Bitcoiners have gone on very similar journeys. Like you discover it, you go shitcoin for a little bit while you like find your footing, and then when you start like maturing and realizing what this really is about, then you stop participating in all the scams and all the money printing, and you focus your energy back on Bitcoin. It just takes a moment to like to make that realization. That's why I think that they do the halving graduations, like what graduation you're from, because you have to kind of go through a halving to really become a maximalist, unless you're extremely smart. You have to go through like this little journey.
It's fascinating to see Marcus Saylor because he has been from the beginning Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like once he got Bitcoin, he never looked at any altcoins. He probably looked at altcoins, but privately, and he researched about it. I'm 100% certain. Like it's fascinating for me how amazingly he entered the space because most do some altcoining. You also see it with Gary Cardone right now. I interviewed him, and he is definitely a Bitcoin maxi. Like when you talk with him, his mindset, that's a Bitcoin maxi mindset that just did not discover the Bitcoin maxi thing. So he will be, I think, right there where he is. But he did the interview with the Cardano guy, I think, or Solana. I think I don't know, one of the two things. I don't even know which shitcoin he was on.
Mhm.
Um,
I had a question under these lines, which was like, would you ever bring on the show to interview like your enemies, in the sense of like keeping your enemies close or learning what they're thinking about? Or would you like trying to strive away from diverging opinions?
I have a close friend in Munich that begs me always to bring some shitcoin on, and I'm always saying I am curious about stuff, but I don't want to promote scams. And for me, all the altcoins are in some sense a scam. Maybe they are not intended as a scam. Maybe they don't want to scam people. They just like really want to improve on something, and they really think there's utility value and innovation in there. But in the end of the day, I think there is no real value. I could be wrong, honestly. I'm getting through my podcast. I actually am more open and more free market maximalist than saying more toxic stuff, because I'm thinking like, okay, there is like someone pays millions of dollars for some picture. I don't get it. Like I don't get art. Like why someone is paying
Oh, the
so.
16 Bitcoin for the buy Bitcoin sign?
Hmm?
Are you talking about the buy
Yes,
Bitcoin
yeah,
sign?
yeah, yeah.
16 Bitcoin?
But
That's awesome.
this is what I also don't get. But um, I'm a free market maximalist where I'm like, if someone pays a price for that, it's okay. Like if like I would not do it, I would not recommend it. But if someone does it, it's okay. Like the if nobody was forced to do it or nobody was lied to, this is where most altcoins fail. When I see their website and they're like, "Oh, we are at this decentralized ding, 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 ding." No, you're not. You're not decentralized. There's one person that can alter the protocol. There's one point, even with Ethereum, there's Vitalik that truly owns and controls this whole thing. He can get the thing from proof of work to proof of stake. He can reverse transactions. He clearly is in control of the protocol. There's no question about it. But they're like, oh, we are decentralizing apps. No, you're like not decentralized. You're more decentralized than a centralized database. But there is a single point of failure. That's a company, what you're running. And this is where I have most of my problems. But I also had people on the gold guy, not Peter Schiff, but someone similar to him, but someone that has actually Bitcoin, but he only has like 5 or 10% of Bitcoin, and the rest is in gold. And he was really also good about altcoins and shitcoins. He was like they have some value, and also he was like gold is superior and stuff like that. But he admitted in the end of the podcast that it's very likely that Bitcoin is outperforming gold. Uh, so he was probably the most anti-Bitcoin maxi guy I had on. But even though the episode was great performing and people liked it, I think it's not bad if you bring on other guests. But right now, like I like to speak with Bitcoiners, and that's why I have the Bitcoiners on.
Yeah, and
That's
I meant it more in the sense that like it's education through debate. I didn't mean it so much as like giving them a space to advertise their own product, but more as in like how much you learn from debating these technologies and actually explaining why they're not Bitcoin and why they're not that like the value that they're trying to propose or the arguments they're trying to make are not
Mm.
there. But then I realized that that would make more sense if you have two guests, one who is in favor of it, one who is against it, and they can debate the technology together. That like hosting
Yeah, I
today.
would definitely I would definitely do that. I don't know if someone is willing to do that because I'm clearly on the Bitcoin camp and I would have to be the moderator that's neutral. It would be really hard for me to to be that neutral host, but I think I would be not as bad in this as some might think. But right now I'm just like really curious about Bitcoiners, and I am booked till I think like middle of May. Like I'm always like at least 2, sometimes even 4 weeks in advance, completely booked every day with guests. So I have absolute no problem in getting guests on the podcast. And so I'm like, before I ran out of Bitcoiners, maybe I think of like, oh, he is really interesting. Maybe let's get a debate or something like that. But there's so many great people out there that I want to interview before I get into altcoins or stuff like that. And then there's already this thing where I'm like, okay, these episodes are getting a few months old now, half a year old, maybe soon like a year old. I started in December. December is still far away, but at some point it's getting a 1 year old. What do I do? Do I release great episodes again because it was a great episode and I can release it again? Or do I invite him back and have a second round with him? And then there are those questions where I'm like curious, like I think I will not run out of cool Bitcoiners to interview. This is a thing that I actually feared when I started it, but there are so many great people in Bitcoin.
And also there's always a new thing happening. So my opinion, it would be to just invite them again because there's always something new happening in Bitcoin and they'll have a new perspective about this new BIP or this new wallet who's doing things wrong or is doing things really right. You know, there's always something new to talk about. So I'm sure you will have plenty of
Yeah,
opportunities to come.
but I actually had this fear where I'm like, who will come on my podcast? Like, like now, 100 episodes later, it seems irrational. But I had to like, who is willing to come on my podcast? Like, who is willing to talk with me? Turns out people like to talk about themselves, and people like to be interviewed. I rarely get someone to say no to an invitation, even bigger ones. Like I actually nobody. There's only I think 3 or 4 people that said no, but they are not because they are big. They just said no because they never went on an interview and they said like they want to stay private and stuff like that. And I even have people on completely anonymous, like their voices, their yeah
Okay.
their
Well, no image and with their voice muffled or like
No,
trans.
no, no. I just blend in like a black screen. Like they're not shown at all, and it's just their voice. So like I'm the only one seen in the screen, and I just blend in their profile photo usually, and that's also like I'm open to like if someone doesn't want to share his face, it's it's fine for me. Like there's no problem. And even it's funny, it has no impact on the average view duration. I thought like people want to see faces, but it does not. Like the people still watch it usually normally.
No, and then there's also some very important players in the Bitcoin industry that will be willing to participate in the conversation, but want to remain anonymous because I've been like when we were doing the Tony Vase podcast, that also happened that we would have guests, he would have guests that were anonymous with the
Yeah.
voice distortion as well. Yeah.
Uh, Voice distortion actually did not had. I think I have. Can I do it? Wait. Now you hear me differently, right? Could you hear me differently now?
A little bit, just a little bit, yes.
Okay, then not really. Okay, but now it's back to normal, right?
Yeah, it was just a little subtle, like a little deeper, but it wasn't like, but who knows? Who knows if that is enough to like do the trick?
Yeah, I played around with my new mixer because of the new microphone. I need a mixer, and I was like I played around a little bit with that. But I was like, yeah, you could do it like that and just go in an interview with that. But it's more for me, it's more a gimmick and not a voice distortion. My voice is pretty known now.
So I have another question for you. I mean, I have another question about the 100 episodes, but before I get to it, I want to ask you, what's your favorite Bitcoin book?
Ooh. I mean, the one that I actually still give out to Orange Pill people is the Bitcoin Standard.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's really boring to say it because it's such an obvious choice, but there's a reason why it's so obvious. It explains the thing, how I see it the best way. And I was orange pilled a lot by Saifedean Ammous. I was orange pilled also by Michael Saylor a lot in my early days, 4 years, like right around 4 years ago. Probably that's why like this book helped me the most to get Bitcoin. When I first got into Bitcoin, I was in the stock mindset. So I was like, an asset has to have a cash flow. Other, if it does not have a cash flow, I cannot value it.
Mhm.
And I really needed Michael Saylor and Saifedean Ammous explaining me the value of money, what is money, and does not has to be a cash flow. And Saifedean does this great because he can explain the history of money so great, especially in his book. And I'm now trying to read also his second and third book, and I think he co-wrote even a fourth book or something like that about food, which I'm curious about. But it does too many books to read, honestly, in the beginning already. There's so many great things going on, and I love it. And Michael Saylor was great because he is the longest serving publicly traded CEO, publicly the CEO of a public traded company. So he knows how to speak to an investor, and I was an investor in stocks. So his articulating things, his way of speaking really resonated with me. So I would love for him to write a book. I would have really, really liked it, but he did not write a book. He just decided to go on podcast, which I respect the decision. But Saifedean, the way he explained it in the Bitcoin Standard is still for me the favorite book, and I think it's really cool also that the foreword of the Bitcoin Standard is now with Michael Saylor after the how was his name? Talis, the other one that was before the forward of the Bitcoin Standard. And now it's Michael Saylor, and I love that they two have like partnered up for that book, and it's still my number one book for orange peeling people and giving it to people. I meet an ex-colleague in like 3 weeks, and when I went from my work, I gifted her this book. So I'm really curious if she has read it, and I will interview her about it. Not interview on the podcast, but I will speak with her about it. So this was the book that was also the most successful in orange peeling people, because when I go ahead and try to speak with people about Bitcoin in real life and orange pilling them, I'm really defensive. Like if they're interested in it, they can come to me and I will point them to resources. And if they then invest the time in being in a book, being in that and that and that, then I'm willing to debate them a little bit more and willing to speak with them more. I completely stopped speaking with people that did not spend time learning about Bitcoin. I found it, maybe it's controversial, but I found it's a waste of time to speak with people that are opinionated about Bitcoin but have no
But
clue
haven't
about it.
studied it. Yeah. Like if they're neutral or don't know, then there's still like a way of like having a dialogue. But if someone is negative but also doesn't want to study it, it's difficult to then find common ground. Definitely.
Yeah,
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
and even people that are neutral about it or like even positive about it, I put them on like, you should study this, you should study this, you should study this. And then after that, I will talk with them because I think you have to, Bitcoin is not something you can spark an interest in someone in like a 1 2 hour conversation, but you have to sit down and really understand it. It's something that's for most people think inflation is good. Most people think that this whole concept of Bitcoin and deflationary money is not as great. Inflation is good. We need inflation a little bit of it. Maybe we have now too much inflation, but a little bit inflation is good. Most people still think that because it's taught in the schools. Then blockchain, nobody knows what actually blockchain is. And then I also try never to introduce too many words they don't understand. Like if you talk with someone and you mention 1 2 words they don't understand, they're gone. So that's why I'm like not even mentioning blockchain or any, like blockchain is like a really like when you say blockchain to a Bitcoiner, they think that you are in crypto world. And when you mention blockchain to a newbie, he does not know what you're speaking about. So like blockchain, you can basically completely delete from your way of speaking. And yeah, it's like I'm trying to make it really easy. Like go out in the world, go in some places where a lot of people pass by and ask them what the halving is. Like if you interview 100 people, maybe one guy knows it because he saw it in the news and he read something about it. Like not a lot of people know what the things that we are taking for granted are. So we have to be the educators. We have to make education really, really good and accessible for everybody. And this means not talking too much technical. If you have a technical podcast, this is fine. But this is a podcast probably for Bitcoiners that are in India and they want to dive deeper for programmers and stuff like that. But if you are wanting to have the newer guys, the newer people in the Bitcoin sphere, you cannot talk in those technical terms. You should also like delete some trigger words from your language. And I always try to do that in my podcast, and it gets really hard. Like if there's something in the podcast that is hard to understand or like a word that is not commonly used, I always ask the guest, okay, can you expand, like, please summarize quickly what you're talking about. I had someone on, he was talking about why the Lightning Network will revolutionize the workforce, and he had some articles in the Bitcoin magazine even about that. And the first thing I did in the podcast, I asked him, okay, can you please, in simple terms, explain what is the Lightning Network? How does it work? And yeah, he had a great explanation for that. But I think this is always important to lay the groundwork because there's some guy that is completely new to Bitcoin that watches now the second video of Bitcoin, and then there's someone talking about the Lightning Network, and he's confused. He's like, what is it like? Is this something else than Bitcoin? Does it belong to Bitcoin? Is it integrative? Like people don't know that, and so you have to be really back to the basics. And this is the most important stuff, you have to stick to the basics. You have to speak in a simple language people can understand. Otherwise, they will just turn off. Like they're sitting in front of their laptop, and there are like 50 other things they can do right now. And there is Netflix popping up. They can relax now. They can go to bed. They can play a video game. But they're choosing to watch this video about Bitcoin. They're giving us their time and getting educated on stuff. So we should not like make inside jokes or like being something excluded. Like if you make an inside joke and someone new comes in, he does not get it. And if you're not inside, you're outside, and then he clicks away and he's he's gone. So that's really important for, I think, for Bitcoiners, for educators, for podcast hosts. If you're not specific, technical, and specific for pro Bitcoiners that are already in there and want to dive deep in some technical terms, then I understand it. But if you are someone that has like Jeff Booths and the Michael Saylors on, and then has people on that more aimed to the new people, keep it really, really simple. Like there's no need to scare someone away with weird financial terms. This is what the financial planners in the bank always do. Like they tell you so many financial terms that you're like, whoo, and then you're like, okay, here my money and deal with it. But we are not that. Like we want to have them take care of their own financial future, and that's why we have to educate them. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. That education of new people, like the newer folks in Bitcoin, and yeah, I think it's really important to speak in a simple language.
Yeah, actually, that like goes into one of my questions that I wanted to ask you earlier, but we got carried away. Like, why Bitcoin? What was your Bitcoin journey? How did you like this? You kind of told me like what your journey was, but how did you discover it, and how did you like, how did it capture you, and why do you
That's
think it's important?
Yeah, that's a really cool story. I was, before I talked about like, let's start from the beginning. When I was 18 years old, or maybe let's start even earlier, I was always an extremely saving person. Like even when my mom gave me like 3 euros to school so I can get some bread in the school, I always took away at least 1 euro. So I was like, even when I was really small and really little, I got the point where I'm like, if I save that money, I can buy my own stuff from that. Like I'm not depending on my mom then. So like I got in initially this thing like if I save financial energy, this buys me freedom that I can do whatever I want with that money. Obviously, you don't get rich if you save 1 euro a day from mom's pocket money when you are like 10 years old. But this was really like early on. And there's even this one thing in that this is funny. I never shared this story, but I think it stuck in my head. And I was like in school, I don't know how old I was, like really little, maybe 11 or 12 years old or something like that. And I was extremely saving, like, and when the other people, and I'm not like from a poor family, like I was from a middle class, normal family. My dad struggled a lot because he built a company. But then when he built a company, he did really good because he sold the company and stuff like that. So we, yeah, struggled financially till I was like 5 years old, but then it was like middle class and it was really good. But so I did not had to save crazy. Like I did not had to like save every cent and watch everything because everything has been given to me. But the funny thing is that I was the saving personality, and it's probably because of my dad, because he also like is like that. And when it was like in one lunchtime in school, it was like 11 a.m. and it was lunchtime. I was in the Spar in a local supermarket, and my mom was by accident also there, and she saw that I only like got a really small bread because I know when I come home I have the whole fridge for myself and I don't have to buy anything. So why eat now a lot when I can eat later for free? And I had this small bread, and my mom was like, "Here, 5 euros, buy something more." Like, Could not see it, and this is some stories that like stuck with me, and having this savings mind, which is then also important for the later story. When you then get to 18 years old, you all of a sudden I even next to school I worked because I got it that I have to work and start earning my money. So I earned my money and I had an IT job, like a software developer, because I was in a software developing school. So I had like some small projects, even with 18 years old, going on. And I saved just money. And with 18 years old, then you can invest because before 18 years old, you're not allowed to invest without your mom and dad. At least in Austria, I don't know how it is around the world, which is funny for me. You can vote with 16 years old, you can drive a car with 17 years old, but investing in your future, you're not allowed till 18 years old, but it's okay. So I opened my account. I got into ETFs, funds, stuff like that. Nothing special. I think I made like a few euros in a year, and yeah, lost it all because I had to pay fees and stuff like that. So first year of investing, it was like leveling out, and I had this moment uh, where where I invested then in individual stocks also. And the funny thing is, like, I had no clue about stock picking. I had no clue about what it is, but I knew I want to do more with my money. Like the savings account I had the ETFs, but it was not enough. Like it was like I put it there because then my money was not in the bank account. So I don't know why I knew initially that it's not doing good if it's just sitting in a bank account. I'm really grateful that I just had this feeling always that if it's just in the bank account, it's not doing anything. I did not understand money, but I just in it, like from my heart, I knew if it's just sitting there, not doing anything, which is fascinating for me that I understood that without any knowledge about it. Like there was no guy in my family explained it to me. Like it was just something that came to my mind. And then yeah, savings account, ETFs and stuff like that. And then I was like, yeah, let's pick individual stocks. I had no clue about it, but let's get into it. And the moment where I was deciding, let's go into individual stocks, I was sitting at McDonald's as a 19-year-old boy, and I was like, yeah, let's buy McDonald's stocks. So I bought McDonald's stocks, and funny enough, from that McDonald's stock, I got a lot of motivation because all of a sudden they were like, I don't know, 500 euros, 600 euros or something like that in the stock. And because of that, I learned a lot about stock investing, PE ratios, stuff like that, management, even got some courses online, dove really deep. The good thing, I was bored at school, so I had my headphones on and learned about investing while I was sitting on school. I make this story maybe a little too long, and hopefully it's not bad for you.
No,
And
it's around Bitcoiners, or I mean, when I started into Bitcoin, I learned that in children, one of the signs that they're going to be successful in life is if they understand delayed reward. So, like, if you
mm,
do an exercise, like, I can give you one cookie now or two cookies when you get back from school, which do you pick? And the children who pick two cookies when you get back from school tend to have a higher chance to succeed in life. So those are very, like, the traits that you're talking about are very aligned with the Bitcoin culture.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And moving on with the story, I then started to learn a lot about individual stock picking,
Mhm.
and I was quite successful with it. I made my actually quite huge gains with it. I lost also a lot of money. Like, it was a really interesting ride for like 3 years or something like that. And because I was extremely successful and I was outspoken about it, I even had a YouTube channel with stock investing. I talked about Tesla stock because this was my most successful stock that I had. Also, I had Apple, Facebook. I had all the tech stock because I was a software developer. And because I was so outspoken about my investing strategies and how much I even shared exactly how much money I made. I now deleted all those videos because it was then you could figure out how much Bitcoin I have now, and I'm trying to hide this a little bit more. But yeah, I guess you can kind of find it out online if you really dig deep. I don't know if it's possible still, but maybe it's somehow possible. And
Even small amount of Bitcoin will be coveted. So once you're in the public eye, what really matters is that you follow your own advice, in the sense that we follow our own advice in terms of security, safety, privacy, and just
yeah.
be meticulous with your cold storage and all that stuff. Because even, yeah, I don't know if you knew about that hack where one of the Bitcoin developers, he's even like a Bitcoin core developer, and he got robbed because
Mhm.
someone, I mean, recently they sent this disclosure that the FBI had collected the names of all the people who had bought tickets to some developer conference. So it seems like someone from there was the person who robbed him. So you just have to be very careful.
Yeah, 100%. I think in self-custody, there's those points where you have to hit, like if you have over 1,000 euros or dollars in Bitcoin, you have to have self-custody. There's no way around it. Under 1,000, there's might be a like, okay, let's accumulate them on exchange and then move them over to self-custody once it hits that. But even then, you can have like a mobile wallet or something like that. But there can be this argument made that Bitcoin on exchange might be even safer than some mobile wallet when it's like broken and then you can not find it anymore. But even above 1,000 euros, there's no discussion about self-custody. You have to have self-custody. And I'm thrilling my friends about it because I have a lot of friends that are in Bitcoin and they have a lot more money than 1,000 euros in Bitcoin and they keep it on exchange.
Oh.
And they even had it on in Celsius and they lost money, but now they got it back. And then it's not that bad because they actually got like, I don't know, 70, 80% or something like that from Celsius back. So now they're like playing it down again. And I'm like, yeah, you will lose it again.
You have to send them to our podcast. Our podcast has a technical section. And
Oh, no.
I really liked a lot of the things you were saying, because for the Spanish podcast, like I'm Colombian originally. And so I want to do a version of the podcast in Spanish, but I had been like struggling to like how to get started. And I
Mm.
think that a lot of what you said helped me, in the sense that it might be easier to start the Colombian podcast with the stuff that to me is kind of trivial, but I think it's not actually trivial. It's just trivial to me because I've heard it so many times. I've had it so internalized that I don't like give it the worth and the value that it has, which is to start with the philosophy and the culture, and more like what is money and why do we like, but in this, but relating it back to events in South America or Latin events, because it's very difficult for Latin people. They don't relate to um like you know how the money goes to the bankers, and we how do you call it when you bailout, the bailouts, like like a lot of Latin people don't have a strong relationship to this idea of bailing out the banks or what, because that's not happening so much in some of the Latin countries as it happens in the developed countries. So we have to like relate it back to economical factors that are happening locally in those communities, but without using big words. Oh,
Mm.
my dog. That reminds me. I think when Safety Inn's book was coming out, that was right when I was getting into Bitcoin. And I think that I got that book for free because I took a photo with my dog and the Mastering Bitcoin book, and it was like a little competition. So Safe DM sent me what is no uh the Bitcoin standard. He sent me the Bitcoin standard because I had won this little photo competition when I first got into Bitcoin. So I read this book a long time ago, and a lot of the things that you talk about the book were the things that resonated with me a lot. Like he has a very good ability to explaining what is money very clearly, and like why that whole structure is falling apart, why, and he makes it less like we're so attached to the coins that we use today because it's become normal. So just the idea that like you would be switching from shells to gold is like, no, why? We have shells. Like, why would we use gold? You're crazy. So like it allows you to understand like the evolution and kind of become less attached to and being more capable of letting go of this idea that we need fiat, and become more comfortable with the idea that this can evolve and become that like our money can become a new thing. It doesn't have to be the same thing we've been using, because this isn't what we have used forever. So I do think that that's a great choice, even though it's an obvious one.
Yeah, and it's so important that we hammer home this basics. And I just discovered that I was I did wander off in my story. I did not even come to my Bitcoin part of the story, how I discovered Bitcoin. I just
Oh yeah, then what happened? Tell us.
I'm sorry. I'm all over the place usually when I speak. That's why when I have like my interviews lined up, and I have the guest on, I have to have like a document on where I'm like, okay, I wanted to talk about this, and I have this question still and stuff like that. Then I'm organized and I can dig deep. But if I'm like interviewed, I'm have no notes or something like that. I'm just like going as I'm going, which is more chaotic. But I was successful investing, and people kept asking me about Bitcoin, and I was for 3 years saying it's a scam. And that's why I'm saying we have to get those basics right. I was saying from 2017 to 2020 that Bitcoin is a scam. And then a friend, a colleague of mine actually asked me, "Oh, what do you think of Bitcoin?" He was not even in Bitcoin. Like he was just asking me about it. But he was asking so great that I discovered that I don't have good enough arguments.
Mhm.
Uh, I went on this journey on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like on a weekend journey. Where I'm like, oh, I don't have a lot of plans, and I had this. I did not have as much to do as I have now, so I had the time to like really block out just 3 days and dive really deep into one topic.
Mhm.
Uh, like Friday coming home from I think it was work back then. Yeah, for civil service I had then it was work. So on Friday midday I came home, got to my computer and was diving deep into Bitcoin till Sunday to prove to my friend that was not even in Bitcoin why Bitcoin
That Bitcoin
the
was a scam.
yes, I want to prove want to find the arguments why Bitcoin is a scam.
Mhm.
And I'm always really open to everything. Like I'm not someone that wants to find his arguments. Really want to dive deep. And I discovered the Bitcoin community back then. In this weekend, I discovered interviews, podcasts, and I was like, oh shit, this could be something that
Uh-huh.
this could be not a scam. So on Monday, I opened my Coinbase account. On Tuesday, I bought my Ledger. This was, yeah, I obviously don't have my Coinbase account anymore. I obviously don't have a Ledger anymore. But I still have, I had this. And then and this is also something, I don't know why, but I did not even get Bitcoin, but I got self-custody on the second day. And I still kind of thought that Bitcoin is a scam, but I already got self-custody. Like I never had custody Bitcoin. Like from the first euro that I invested in Bitcoin, I always had self-custody. I don't know why actually. I just like I watched a video and he's like, "Oh, I get self-custody," and I was like, "Okay, let's get self-custody then."
Mhm.
I did not understand what it is. I think I thought it's the only way to hold Bitcoin. I thought you cannot even hold it somewhere else because the exchange that I used to buy my stocks did not offer Bitcoin back then.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, I have to go to and like how to buy Bitcoin. And then there was like some video, I don't even remember who made it, but he's like, oh, get a Coinbase account, then put it on your ledger. And then I was like, okay, let's get a Coinbase account, buy a ledger, put it on there. So like there was never the question if I leave it on Coinbase. And yeah, this was basically my Bitcoin story. It was 2020. And from there onwards, I just learned every weekend a little bit more. And funny enough, from 2020 to 1 year later, I went from having all those stocks, all those properties, and getting completely only in Bitcoin 1 year later. Like 2021 was the point where I was only in Bitcoin because I got educated on it. And I was like, at some point, I was 50-50, 50% Tesla, 50% Bitcoin. Then I was like, one day, it does not make sense that I hold Tesla. Tesla can be crashing tomorrow because Elon Musk makes something stupid, I still
Sweet.
yeah, some tweet or something. I think the company is great, but holding so much money in just one company is a big risk because with every company, there can all the time something happening. So I was just like, I don't want to have this centralized risk. And I don't know when, somewhere around 2021, I decided to ditch all my Tesla stocks and got slowly more and more in Bitcoin. And I had 5%, 10%, 20% in Bitcoin. And then, yeah, 1 year later, around that time, after I got my first Bitcoin, then I got all in Bitcoin. I only have Bitcoin now. I own my microphone, laptop, camera, computer, and my Bitcoin. That's it. Nothing else. Like I live rented. I don't own anything else, not even a car or something like that. I try to own nothing except Bitcoin and things where it does not make sense to rent it. I saw like some phone renting and a laptop renting, but this does not make sense for me financially. So the things that are small, like under €1,000, like microphone, phone, keyboard and stuff like that, that I buy. But other than that, and clothes, of course, and stuff like that. But other than that, I just have Bitcoin.
Yeah, I actually watched an episode of somebody who has been in Bitcoin for a long time now, and he was talking about how he didn't own real estate anymore or anything because that way he was free, who could move and move around. The only part that I found difficult about that concept or that approach is my trust for the food sources. The thing is that like in Europe, you're not at such risk, but living in the United States, like I don't trust the steak I can buy at the store. I don't trust the eggs. I don't trust the milk. You have to be very careful how you source your food if you don't own anything. I have chickens at home.
Oh yeah, I mean this is like I also have a small dog, but I don't. When I say I don't have assets, I don't consider my dog an asset.
Well,
But
but
yeah,
you have to
yeah.
kind of have land to be able to have chickens and
Oh yes,
stuff
yes,
like
yes.
that.
Definitely. And I like the approach that Jack Mallers said. Like, I think Jack Mallers, and I want to get to this level. I made even a tweet about it. He said, like, I own my company, my house, and my Bitcoin. And I think this is a good approach. Like, if you have a company, obviously it's good to own it. And then the next thing is a house. I would, if you have not enough money. So like if you're in a situation where when you buy a house, it would be all your financial energy that you need to buy this house, I would definitely not recommend buying a house because then all your financial energy is tied into that. Then you have to pay back a credit maybe over 40, 20 years. This is like really hard to overcome and it binds you to one place. But if you really want to like it's emotional an emotional decision, you can still do it. I personally don't choose to do that because I want to be a little bit more free. If you're in a situation where like when you buy a house, it would only be like a few percent of your net worth, then like go ahead and don't have a problem with that. But I would not pay to put all my financial energy in a house and then don't have any Bitcoin or stuff like that because I think real estate could become let's frame it more positively. Real estate will become way more affordable in the future, I think.
Well, and the thing is that the trick is that you buy the house, then you're in debt, then you have to have a job. So you become a slave to the fiat system because you need that income in order to pay for the house. So
Yeah.
the objective of this Bitcoin community is to try to help you strive away from those like money time stealing strategies.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm actually I mentioned I mean I'm keep mentioning my book, but it's not even written. So let's see how it was. But this is kind of also the idea where I want to go because I learned a lot by interviewing people and by like just being on my own and being way more free because Bitcoin in the end of the day is just money, but money can teach you something. And I'm now in the position where I'm totally free of time and location. Like I can choose whenever I want to work, and I can choose wherever I want to work because it's all like online. The thing that I did not succeeded with completely is financial freedom. For me, financial freedom is when you have so much financial energy that you can stop doing any work tomorrow and you will be fine for the rest of your life. This is when you have complete financial freedom in my definition. Other people have other definitions of that. So I try to value my financial energy actually in time. I like when someone asks me, "Oh, do you value your net worth in Bitcoin or in euros?" I'm like, I value my net worth in time. Like when I stop doing everything tomorrow, how many years can I possibly live off my Bitcoin stack? That's how I value my net worth in kind of a time. Obviously, I'm not paying with like, oh, I bought McDonald's for 5 minutes of my life now, or something like that.
Well, it's just that's why some people say that there is never enough money because um, the definition of what it means to be like so I can get by for the rest of my life, it changes from person to person. Like one person is going to want to have a yacht to travel around the ocean, so they need a lot to get by for the rest of their life. But if you, I mean, if we're talking just the basics, have a decent home, have a like good access to good quality food. Those things are not so expensive. And if you live humble and you appreciate those little things in life, then that number goes down quite drastically and it becomes more feasible and accomplishable.
And I think when you get to this point where you're completely free, like you lowered your life standard, and this sounds always bad, lowering your life standard, but I think it's something good. Lowering your life standard to something that you like, a minimalistic life where you can live off comfortable for a long period of time, then you have all this free time. And if you are a decent human being, which I think 99% of the people are, then you will do something with that time. Maybe not on the first week, but at 1 month, you will get bored. I'm 100% sure. Like there are so many stories about young millionaires that try to retire at 23, then they retired till 24, and then they started companies at 25 again because, yeah, doing nothing is boring.
Yeah, doing
Uh,
something is difficult. You have to like okay, you achieve that and then what? You just spend it on a beach or are you gonna travel or you go to Bitcoin conferences? Like what do you do with that time?
And then there's this interesting point when you're completely free. You don't have to spend any time where you don't want to spend it. You can spend on the whole topics that you really are passionate about. And then all of a sudden, you're thinking of ways how you can contribute to that community. Then you're free of like, I don't have to have money from that. You can just contribute freely to it. And I think then there's the point because you are contributing and because you are doing so many great things in this community that you're actually getting the money that you actually can buy maybe a yacht someday or something like that because you're free, you're thinking in another way. And this is what I basically discovered. I was really worried about finances. I was like, because I'm always like I want to have more income than like expenses every month. And I was like, if I drop my normal job, can I hold myself over water with having more income than expenses? Answer short is yes, I can. And I'm even like close to the level than I was before, even though I just started out with that. But the amazing thing is that I don't worry about money. Like I was so worried before I took the step to become self-employed about money, and it was completely senseless. I'm not worried about money at all in my day. I just stand up at like 5, 6 in the morning and I work the whole day. Right now it's like 10:30 at my time. So I'm like up, like, I don't even want to calculate how many hours I'm already working. But it does not feel like work. It doesn't feel like a burden to me. It's something so amazing if you can just stand up and do what you like, do what you love. I'm feeling so grateful that I can talk about the thing that I'm most passionate about in my life right now every day, and this every day with a different human being that is amazing and does great things in his life, and I can learn from them. And this is back to your original first question, what who did I learn the most from it? I learn from every guest that comes on something new. And this is fascinating to see because if you're actually researching about the guest and you're actually listening to the guest, because if you're host, you kind of have to listen to the guest and you have to think of new questions and stuff like that. And then post-production, you have to edit it. You listen to it twice, like you listen to it 3 times before you publish it, and maybe a fourth time. You really learn a lot. Like I still I'm having every day audiobooks, and I'm trying to learn more. But even if I did not learn anything, just my guests are a great source because we are talking about social media, we are talking about branding, we are talking about businesses, we are talking about Bitcoin, we are talking about life, we are talking about food, we are talking about so many different things. Even just for my guests, I think I would benefit so much from all those conversations. And then I'm also getting invited to other podcasts. This week I have this one and another one. Next week I have another invitation to a podcast. So it's just great to being able to live off something that you really love. And I can just encourage everybody to do exactly that. I'm not as aggressive as Gary Cardone says it. If you are just working for money, you're a whore. But I truly think that if you are not happy with the things you're doing, you should at least try to find something you love and find a way how you can also get financially rewarded from that.
I think we have very similar journeys, like not in everything, but we have had moments where we've had very similar journeys. Because right now I've like chosen to start this podcast, and the way it works for me is that if I'm having fun doing it, like this can last for a very long time because I enjoy the actual doing, which is
Mm.
which is kind of like what you were saying. Like when I'm here and I'm shooting and I'm putting together the gadgets and I'm putting together the technical episodes, like I knew a lot about Bitcoin before starting the podcast, but I understood it like in a generic way. But the podcast forces me to go from the generic to the specific, and because I need to communicate these ideas and be very secure of like the technical concepts I'm communicating. So it's like forced me to go from like generic understandings to completely specific, like down to the code understandings. And it's been really, really fun. I really connect with you on the fact that you have to enjoy what you're doing. And when you do enjoy it, and the irony is that when you do enjoy it and you find something that you're passionate about, you're very likely to make a lot of money from it.
Yeah. Do you have two different podcasts where you have like technical things and where you just like have this conversation like this?
It's more like a series. So we have a technical series, we have a gadget series. So the technical, I'm just like talking about the actual technology. In the gadgets, it goes like complementing the technical series. So if I've been talking about keys, then I talked about key storage systems. Now I'm gonna do the what is a wallet episode where I'm gonna talk just technical. Then I'm gonna do the keystone. I'm gonna do the J. Then I'm gonna talk about what is a node. Then I'm gonna do like running a node. So I'm doing the technical like hand by hand with the gadgets. And then on the other side, we're doing like news and noteworthy and cultural, which is
Mm.
like I covered like the Copa case, or like these interviews are more like the cultural section, because Bitcoin has so many facets. I couldn't really like narrow it down to like one thing. So I just had one podcast with multiple series, and the fifth one is going to be in Spanish. But in Spanish it's weird because you kind of have to do all four, right? We're still going to have technical talks, we're still going to have philosophical talks. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm not totally sure. But going back to your show, I do have a couple questions before we finish, which is what have been your top 10 or top 5 favorite interviews? That's one. And the other one is, what is your wish list? Or like a couple names on your wish list that you still haven't gotten to grasp?
I start with the wish list. I made it publicly that I have this goal to have 300 interviews this year at least. I might go over 300 because I'm doing it daily now. I think if I'm continuing it daily and I'm exceeding, like I will end up at like 310, 320 or something like that.
Okay.
Uh, I'm really passionate about doing over 300. And I would love the 200th guest to be Saifuddin Moose and the 300th guest Michael Saylor. But I did not even reach out to them, so like they could not even did not even had the chance to say yes to me. But I will do it soon with Saifuddin Moose, and then a little later with Michael Saylor, and I would love to have them on the podcast, just because like Michael Saylor and Saifuddin Moose are the one of the most influential guys in the early days on my Bitcoin thinking, and I got it. Right now, I'm not listening to them because I consume them so much that I kind of, when I listen to a Michael Saylor interview, it kind of gets boring nowadays for me. That's why I like to listen to new guys. That's why I also invited a lot of new guys in. My top five, that's like really hard of the current interviews. I love the interview of Gary Cardone, not because of the Bitcoin aspect, because he's just a 66-year-old guy who has a lot of life experience, and you get the authenticity and this I don't care about anything kind of a vibe, which is really interesting to see, and it was like a fun experience to have. Then the second I would put a lot of guys and unfortunately I don't have too many girls on. I would love to have you on my podcast because if I scroll through my guest list, it's like girl, girl. It's like I try to have as many women also on as possible, but coming back to the question, two, I would get like the people like Luke, the people from I forgot his name. He was my third guest, and he said Bitcoin is a system based on love. I never heard that before, and I
Love.
really love yes, love.
Okay.
Uh, and I loved it and how he explained it also. And he was never on a other podcast than mine. And I loved his explanation. I loved how he's talking about like on the second place, I would put like two, three of them who just like really had an amazing view. And I didn't knew it before. Like because they don't put out a lot of tweets, they don't have any YouTube channels. They were never on a podcast. So, like, what do you know about this? The persons, like nothing. And I was just going on to those podcasts with not a lot of questions because how do you prepare for a podcast where there's nothing online? And I just like open like, hi, how are you doing? Let's go through your Bitcoin story, and then it goes in the directions that you see. And those are the stories and those are the podcasts that I actually like the most, honestly, because they are completely um, they are so new and they're so like they have sometimes opinions that I'm like really have to think about them. If Jeff Booth is saying something, I don't really have to think about it because I heard it 20 times before. Even with Gary Cardone, it was nothing new. I listened to a lot of podcasts of his before, what he does and what he thinks. It was a little more interesting because he's really early now in the Bitcoin community, and he's not fully there as Jeff Booth is and as Michael Saylor and all the other bigger ones, and Natalie Brunell. Natalie Brunell, I also want to highlight because she has a different kind of energy. I love it. I love how she's talking. But she's a lot on like Fox News and all those channels. And I think she's really used to having like only like 5 minutes time or like 2 minutes time to talk about something. And it was overwhelming for me, her amazing energy, where she's like straightforward, really good in speaking, really good in speaking in a high energy way. where I'm like, "Ugh." It was overwhelming for me. I felt a little bit the overwhelming it. I loved the interview. I watched it already twice, even though twice after it came out because her insights was amazing. Before I watched it like three, four times for editing and stuff like that. So Jeff Booth, I already mentioned, this was a big one for me because it personally impacted me, even though content-wise, I did not learn a lot of new stuff. But personally, it was really, really, really cool for me. Let's see if I can find another example that was amazing. I mean, okay, I have to mention like the first one that I ever did. The story of the first podcast is always amazing because you don't like, I think Mr. Beast says it, the first 100 videos you're doing, you don't have any clue what you're doing. And I feel like that is really true because with every like 20 episodes I'm doing, I'm feeling so dumb what I did like 20 episodes ago. I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I know a little bit. Like I know 2% what it takes to be a good host of a podcast. Maybe 2% I know. When we have like 100%, we have like a Joe Rogan, a Lex Friedman, from outside of Bitcoin, inside of Bitcoin, Peter McCormy that has done a lot of interviews. Preston Bish is, I think, also really good. Natalie Brunel is also really good. Like when those are like between 80 and 100%, I think I'm like at 2% of skill level. And I have to learn a lot more. And that's why I'm also doing it like whole my life. And when we talk about like 300 episodes a year about in the next like 80 years, a lot of episodes, a lot of, I'm really looking forward to my episodes when I'm like 90 years old.
But it
and,
was
and
good that you like picked a very precise like focus to do it with interviews because then like it keeps it very like channeled. You have a very like focused mindset, and so you can like barrel towards that goal very coherently. For me, it's harder because like for example, technical episodes don't perform very well because they're for like a very educational sweetheart. Thank you. They're for educational purposes, so it like it takes time for people to catch on, or it's just a resource for people. The ones that perform the best are when you're talking about what's happening at this moment with the controversies of like what's happening at the moment. So like any interview with anybody who's involved in any situation that is unfolding as you're going is going to be a huge success.
and I'm 100%. I love doing the podcast and doing like every day the podcast, having new people on. It's something I'm really grateful to have. And I'm wondering why I did not start it earlier now. But yeah, I needed time. Like I went into Bitcoin. I think when we go into how I grew, like how I came into Bitcoin in the Bitcoin community, like in 2023, I started my Twitter account where I'm like really every day I publish something. I had back then, I think 300 followers or maybe 400 or something like that. Now I'm in it 11,000 something 1 year later. And now I'm like, since December, I'm also starting the podcast. I had like 200 followers on YouTube in January. Now I have like over 3,000. And it's just overwhelming for me that people are actually deciding to listening to me. It's still like I cannot I can I just don't get the point with like people deciding. And also I don't know if you look to the YouTube statistics a lot, but you get the metric how many hours
Mhm.
in total people inside of your video. And when I released the last episode with Gary Cadone, it was like the first 4 hours, 800 hours were spent in my videos in the first 4 hours. I'm like a lot of hours spent in the videos, and I think the best episodes with Jeff Booth, with Peter Dunworth, with Gary Cadone, with other people, they're like thousands of hours in this video alone. And even bad episodes get like 500, 400, 700 total watch time hours. And I'm like, I'm feeling so humbled that people give me that time. And that's why I'm really passionate about making the video as good as I possibly can with the trailer, with the edits. I try to, if there's something weird in the voice of the guest, I'm trying with Adobe Enhanced Speech, with getting the speech a little bit better and enhancing the audio. Because if people are willing to invest so much time in me, I should invest like money and my resources to make it as good as I possibly can. And I try to get better with every episode. That's why I last week just bought a camera to make it a little bit more soothing. It's not as bright, it's a little bit more dark. I have like a LED light there. I have now the best microphone I could find. It's the Shure from what Joe Rogan, I think almost every big podcast uses. And these are all investments that I make for basically because people are willing to invest time in my podcast. I have to pay back this trust and this time that people are paying me forward. So like I'm also my soundproofing my system. I don't know if you saw the tweet of mine yesterday or the day before. I have egg boxes standing here and blanket is coming down here. So my voice is not like a reverb because my room is like a Arctic, and so the voice is really bad if I don't have those things. And I'm trying to invest more and more into the quality of the content because when people invest their time, I should invest in the quality of the content.
And Bitcoiners have a tendency to reward hard work. Like proof of work is a big thing in the media. So if you invest your time into producing a high quality product and this is recognized by the community, then the community will offer a lot of support back. So I think your success is also a reflection of the fact that that the community is appreciating what you're doing, that there is an audience for your work, that it is like high quality. So I wouldn't worry too much about the little technical details. At the end of the day, what the reason people are following you is because they respect like the content and the people you're bringing on board, the effort you're making. They're very low time preference, so they're okay with things taking a little bit longer if in the end you're going to deliver something that's worth the wait.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to note that I'm really just getting started. Like the podcast is not even 4 months old, or is it now 4 months old? I think it's now exactly 4 months old because I started on 28th of November, December, January, February, April. Yeah. March, I lost March. It's 5 months old actually right now. I forgot the March to count. Yeah, it's 5 months old exactly now, and I'm really like I'm humbled by the feedback I got from the Bitcoin community. But I'm just getting like started. It's fascinating for me that people are like signing up for channel memberships on YouTube to pay me monthly. People are giving me money on value for value for Fountain and all those weird stuff for me that I cannot really comprehend, but people are actually paying for a free product that is out there after the fact. So it's fascinating to see the Bitcoin community rewarding, as you said, hard work and the proof of work. And I'm doing my best, but I'm not even a half year in. So like I'm a Bitcoin podcast newbie, and I'm trying to pay my way.
I have one last question for you before we go. So it's similar to what you do. So you, at the end of your episodes, you ask your guests to ask a question for the next guest. So my
Yeah.
question for you was like, what question has been the most interesting, or what question would you wish they asked that they haven't asked? Something about the questions you asked, because I found that really endearing. I like that one.
First of all, I stole that from the Diary of a CEO. Like this was not my idea. Diary of a CEO is a podcast outside of Bitcoin that I really like to listen to. Now there's a little less, but I really loved to listen it last year. And he just make the same thing that I'm making, he's making. I just copied it 100%, and I loved it so much that I was like, I have to copy that. I tried to put my own spin on it, but I did not like my own spin on it. So I just copied it. And I also thought it is amazing for the Bitcoin community because it goes back to this blockchain thing where the guests are interconnected to each other, where the guest is pointing with a question to the next guest, like in the blockchain, they're pointing to the next blocks. So I love that it's suiting so well. And yeah, but I just want to note that I just copied that and I love it. What was your question? What's the most interesting question? Yeah.
Or one that you wish people would ask, but they haven't, or some, yes. Which question would you like to highlight from that set?
uh, I love the rudimentary questions like what is freedom that came up, or even the outside of Bitcoin questions I always like. For example, the question that I liked a lot is like, what is the daily habit that you love and would not live without? That one daily habit that you do.
Mhm.
Uh, this is also an interesting thing that sparks interesting conversations. Like basically, I actually like when they are asking questions a little bit outside of Bitcoin because Bitcoin is well covered in my podcast usually, and usually like when it's a Bitcoin question, it's covered already before that, like a little bit even. So when I see the question, obviously I know the question before we get in the interview. So I try to get around that question so it's not covered in the podcast. But sometimes it's hard because the guest gets where the guest gets. Like I don't try to guide the guest. I just try to be like the get the best side of out of the guest as possible. And yeah, it's fascinating for me to see that more and more questions are getting outside of Bitcoin. And then there are some questions that are really technical. That's sometimes interesting. I think one question I also want to highlight. That's why I now started to like not reveal who the next guest is to the guest. Like
Mhm.
I having like asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is,
Mhm.
uh, because it was already misused as a as a question that Arsen from the Relay, the social he's the social media leaders from Relay. He knew the next guest,
Mhm.
uh, and he was like, I was asking for the next like, why are you bold? And I loved it because they knew each other really good. Like they had a really friendly thing going on. They loved it, and it was we made a clip about that. But for me, that's why I started to not reveal who the next guest is to get it like fresh. Because when I reveal who the next guest is, then people think of this person and try to tailor a question to him. And this is not like where it should go. It should like be like completely new. Like why is like what is freedom? What's your daily habit like? What else was in there? But there's like a question that nobody asked till now. Nobody asked till now why Bitcoin for some reason.
Why
The
Bitcoin?
why Bitcoin never nobody ever asked on the podcast why are you actually in Bitcoin, but it's fair because I usually cover that in the podcast. And the thing that I like to have, like I started asking that a lot of my guests, and nobody ever asks that in the end of in the end routine of the question. I started to ask the guests, what are you currently really passionate about besides Bitcoin? Because I think Bitcoiners are doing so many great stuff, and we can learn from that as a Bitcoin community what they are doing outside of Bitcoin. Uh, and from that, so that's like to the end, I'm more and more getting this question in, not with every guest, but with more and more. And nobody ever asks that because I think it's an interesting question to think about. Okay, right now, what are you learning? What your audiobooks, your podcasts, what are they about? Because this is changing for me all the time. Like 1 year I had a whole different a thing that I'm currently right now, because right now I'm starting a podcast. Obviously, I'm listening a lot to like what is important for podcast. How do I make like a brand out of a podcast? How can I scale it? What is personal branding? Like, because I have to know all about that to get the Bitcoin message out there. The becoming back to the earlier things that we said about the best way to orange pill people. The
Mhm.
best way for me to get the Bitcoin message out there is if my podcast is really big.
Mhm.
Like, as long as, like, I would not care too much about that my podcast is really big, but that's the best way for me to get the Bitcoin message out there, and maybe even so big that it's a little bit outside of Bitcoin. That's why I started, this also did not cover a lot. I started naming the podcast the Bitcoin Path. And then I decided after like 10 or 20 episodes to not give it any name. Just name the podcast nothing. Like, it's just Robin Seyr. It's like just my name. And I made this decision really consciously, because I want to talk about anything I'm currently passionate about. I think the next 10 years will be about Bitcoin. The next 10 years of the podcast will be primarily about Bitcoin.
Mhm.
But even if it goes beyond Bitcoin, because at some point, it's sometimes hard to think about that, but at some point, Bitcoin will be boring because everybody will use it. It will be the base layer of our financial system. And it will be like we are talking about the TCP/IP protocol. Who cares what the TCP/IP protocol is now? Everybody uses it. Everybody, when you send like messages on the phone, when you send anything, there is always the TCP/IP protocol somewhere connected with it. But nobody has a podcast about it because it's boring, and Bitcoin will also be boring.
I actually asked myself this question, like a similar question, and it comes to that this idea that Bitcoin is just money. So like sometimes I struggle with this idea because my daughter is like, Mom, why are you always talking about Bitcoin? Are we gonna go see your Bitcoin friends? So I'm like, okay, what's going on? But it is a little bit because it's a new technology. We're like redefining what money means. So it's kind of fair that it's about Bitcoin, because I do wonder sometimes, like Bitcoin is just the tool that we are going to use to do all kinds of other things. So right now we're really like focused on the tool, but really like what is the tool allowing us to then go and do? So I love
Yeah.
that you're taking that approach. That's a great take on that whole situation.
Yeah, I just could not decide a name, and I was like, then let's not name it at all. Like, my YouTube is just Robin Seyr. My thing is also Robin Seyr. Like, you can find it with Robin Seyr. There's actually, when you Google Robin Seyr podcast, there's another Robin Seyr podcast coming up. It's called Robcast. It's not my current podcast. It was a podcast of my past. It's in German, and I cannot delete it for some reason. But
That was one
it's
of my questions, but I didn't like kind of we still have a minute to maybe discuss it. Why do you choose to do English instead of German, for example?
that's I get that asked a lot in the comments. People even say like I should do German because for
Mhm.
some reason they want to have it in German. But I don't care for that. And I don't care for that specific reason, because I think we have a lot of great content creators in the German area. We have Block Trainer, we have Sunny Degree, we have really like, I think, five, six Bitcoin only podcasts in German. I don't know how it is in Spain and other languages, but in German, we're really great represented. There is no need everybody, like, there's always a need for more stuff, and we can always saturate the market more, and there can always be another Bitcoin podcast in that language, and it's the more the better.
Mhm.
But there is not like, oh, there's not one. We even have Nico Jilch. Completely forgot about them. He's Austrian. He's doing a great job. And there's so many great Austrian, German, Swiss content creators that doing only German content,
Mhm.
where I'm like, it's not like there is a hole in the market and there's no Bitcoin podcast. Like Nico Yale, he invites really cool people. He has an in-person studio. He's doing extremely professional. He's now partnering up with a football team in Austria. He's like on a whole nother level. He's a really good block trainer. I love him. He's on the Bitcoin stage also in Prague. Like there are really good people in Germany, in German. And there are also a lot more in English than in German, but there are really great people in English also. So for me, I got to take this decision freely because I know there are a lot of great Bitcoin podcasts in English. There are a lot of great Bitcoin podcasts in German. So there is no need for me to fill any hole in any market, really. I just can find my own space. And I worked in the company where I primarily talked English with my clients because my client was in France. I have an Indian girlfriend, which she does not know German. She understands some German, but she cannot really speak German. So I talk with her every day in English because I also don't know Hindi. uh, um, Even though I'm trying to learn a little bit, but it's not an easy language for me.
Mhm.
So we talk every day in English. I have like 50% of my friends are from like America, England, from wherever. So I talk with them English and not German. Like even like some of my friends are English and not German. So for me, English, it's not mother language level, but I can speak it without thinking about it. And I even went on a kind of an English standard in my private life, where when I set up a new system, when I set up a new phone, everything is English. Like everything that I set up is in English. And then I only was like, what do I want to do? Because I can speak in German and I can speak in English. There's no difference for me in there. And then there's two aspects that are now were deciding for me. The first aspect is not all German is German. If I speak in the Austrian dialect, some German don't even understand this. And it's uncomfortable for me to speak in the High German's language,
Mhm.
the high standard of German. It's like the German that the Germans speak,
Mhm.
and the German that the Austrian speaks is a little different, even though the basis is the same.
Mhm.
Uh, I feel more comfortable in English than the high standard of German. And if I have a German speaking podcast, I probably have to speak in the high language of German, because then like Germany doesn't understand me, the Swiss does not understand me, then it's just an Austrian podcast and it's really small. And this was one of the smaller aspects, but the bigger aspects is I want to talk with people all over the world. I don't only want to talk with
Oh,
Austrians and Germans,
interesting.
and this is the most important part. Because if I have a German podcast, we are not there yet with AI translation where we can real time translate it really good. So
Mhm.
English is the kind of the middle standard. And when you only talk with German and Austrians, like Germans, Austrians, Swiss, they are in like a Western civilization. They think the same way, kind of. They have a similar way of living. Obviously, people are different, but you get where I'm going. Like they're in a similar region. So I had Indians on, I had Africans on, I had people from America on, Australia on, Canada on. I had so many different parts of the world already on my podcast that I did not want to miss out. And only 10%, right around that number, of my podcast are actually German speaking people that I forced to speak English with me, even though some of them did not like it. But I forced them to do it because I want to have this Bitcoin standard. I might, if I have a great Bitcoin English podcast, I might do a second channel. And either if AI translation is good, translate all my podcast episodes in German with AI, so people can easily get it, because there are some Bitcoiners that are not comfortable with hearing English or just don't know English. that well, and I want to get them access to my English ones. Or even if AI translation is not good, I might just start interviewing some of the Germans again in German for a second channel. But I probably don't do that. I probably do the AI translation, but it's a possibility. But right now, I'm just focused on the English podcast and doing that. And the biggest reason is for me speaking with the guest all over the world.
Yeah, your decision process was a little bit different for me from mine. I think it's very interesting how you came to that decision, and because you're focused in interviewing people, and English is like a more universal language that you can use to communicate with different people. I think for me it's a little bit different because with Spanish it's not like with German. There isn't so much high quality content specifically about Bitcoin in Spanish. There are some like good Bitcoin podcasters, and BTC Sessions just put out a little seminar in Spanish. I was quite impressed. But I think when it comes to Spanish, there is kind of a hole in the market. um and it's not just for money reasons, it's more so for educational reasons. Like there is a void that isn't being filled in terms of providing a service to these communities, that they can access like some resources and get informed about the tools and the culture and the technology in Spanish. The part that is like hard for me, that is kind of why you picked English, is that it's very hard to bring people on your podcast to interview them in Spanish, because there isn't that many Spanish speaking people who are like at that level that will be like a Natalie Brunel in Spanish, you know? So I've been thinking of ways of delivering this information to the Ibero-American community, different like strategies to make it happen.
I think AI translation will be soon really good, and I think it will be consumable, and it will be really good. Like maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years. I don't know what the time span is. I even saw some bigger podcasts already experimenting with that and offering the English podcast in 2 or 3 other languages on different channels with AI translations. I mean, you have to spend money on that. There are tools, they're working a lot, and utilizing a lot of processing power, so they are not inexpensive. But I think at some point, it doesn't matter what language you're uploading. The user of, let's say, YouTube can just choose, oh, I want to consume that in my local language in Spanish. I want to use it in French, in German, in whatever. And YouTube does from the source to every other language. I don't know if we're there in 10 years, 20 years, or 5 years, or probably not 1 year. But I think at some point, language does not matter that much, because AI translation and innovation tools are just that good with translating to every language.
Yeah, and I think it's also about speaking the person's language, like not their actual language, but their language culturally and their language financially. Because I think the reason why it's easy for you to speak English or German is because between the Americans or the British or the Germans or the Austrians, there's going to be a huge overlap in terms of the tools that are available, the resources that are available, the points of view are going to be similar life experiences. And that doesn't translate very well for South Americans. South Americans don't feel like represented sometimes in those discussions and those experiences. So I think more so than the literal language, the reason why AI can't really fill that gap, it can at a technical level, but it can't really fill the gap, because you need the person to be communicating in terms of life experiences that those audience members can also relate to. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see like where this whole AI future goes.
Yeah, I was just talking obviously about the language itself,
Yeah,
like just like the words translated. So like the same thing that basically the American series are doing with all the different languages, where they just have someone speaking over them. So like I don't know, the Big Bang Theory, for example, from America,
dubbing.
there there's a German version of that, where some actual German person is speaking over that, and doing the jokes also differently and stuff like that. So I think we will get to that kind of a level where AI can do it as good as a human can translate it. Because I'm also like fascinating when I switch sometimes with ChatGPT in Austrian dialect, and he's like, speak with me as you would be someone from this Austrian small region. And I'm like, what? He's actually texting exactly as an Austrian would do. So I think just at an language level will be there. Then it will be interesting if AI can also like translate jokes and stuff like that. Because as you said, a joke in America is different than a joke in India, and is different than a joke in Austria, is different than a joke in Latin America. So that will be interesting to see if they can uh, have a similar joke that also Latin Americans see, but I have no clue, honestly. I just hope that at one point I press a release and my English podcast gets to everybody and everybody understands it, but I'm just hopeful.
All right. Why don't we close, since we didn't answer the question why Bitcoin? Why don't we close with a little statement of why you think people should Bitcoin? Why Bitcoin?
There are two aspects to it. The first one is the one that people in the West are really concerned about is number grab technology. They want to have more financial gain from it. And yes, you will have this 100% Bitcoin will rip all other assets apart in the next 10 years. It will be not funny. People will attack Bitcoin because they will be envy of it. People will attack Bitcoiners because they will be envy of Bitcoiners, and people will be Bitcoin will be extremely high performing asset over the next 10, maybe even 20 years, because we are just seeing like we have this 3% adoption rate, and once we hit maybe like at 5-6%, the number can vary depending on what metrics you use. But once we hit this 10%, like this S-curve adoption, it will take maybe 10 years from 10% till we hit to the 80-90%. So this complete FOMO, this complete price appreciation level will hit sooner than most people think and harder than most people think. And even Bitcoiners, I think even me, we are not ready for the enormous price appreciation. That's why I'm saying so much. Get self custody. Be ready for it. Exchanges will be rug pulled. Try be as self sovereign as you possibly can. And then the second aspect to this is freedom grab technology. This is for everybody. Uh, this is for everybody that is concerned about their government maybe trying to limit their freedom in financial transactions. Maybe they are concerned about institutions trying their freedom in some sort. This is the part where you should really get passionate about. The first part you can also do with stock investing, maybe picking some stocks or investing in your own company or something like that. But what you cannot do is the second part, freedom grab technology. It's something that is freeing so many people from different countries where they obviously all of a sudden they can give money to someone. I think a big part was also Canada, the Canadian trucks. This was a huge part of the Bitcoin history for me because this showed people that a crowdfunding only works if you do it with Bitcoin tools. If you do crowdfunding, so decentralized crowdfunding with fiat tools, they will freeze the assets. If they do it with Bitcoin, with privacy in mind, with self-custody in mind, they cannot do anything from it. And they even froze bank accounts from people that just gave those Canadian truckers money. And I don't care what you think about the Canadian truckers, on what side you're politically on. I don't care, but it should never be an attack on the person that just wants to support financially a political group. They should never be frozen from the assets like this. The financial energy of a person is their life's energy to a certain extent, and you should never, as a political group, attack that. But they will attack it, and it's just a matter of time you are on the wrong side of government, or you on a country where you are on the wrong side of government. So why not protect yourself from that if you also get the free number grab technology? Like you get both in one thing. And I think this is the short elevator pitch that I usually give to people if they've asked me why Bitcoin. And then there's usually like 20 things that they think that Bitcoin is not working on coming. And then I'm saying, okay, if you're not convinced, go verify yourself, go study yourself. I don't care if you get Bitcoin. If you don't get Bitcoin, it benefits me because then the adoption is slower, then I can buy more. I'm 25. I want to buy a lot of, I want to buy a lot of Bitcoin. I don't want to be rich now. I want to be rich when I'm 65 years old.
Mhm. Yeah, give us more time to stack sats. And also there's this phrase where it's like people buy Bitcoin at the price that they deserve. So if they reject it now and have to buy it later at a higher price, it's kind of like you brought it upon yourself. So that creates a little friction, but it's a very hard truth to swallow.
100%. And yeah, I said like 3 years long, I said Bitcoin is a scam. I could picked up so many Bitcoins. I don't even want to think about how many more Bitcoins I would have to compared to I have now. I'm like always looking at my stack. I'm like, oh shit, this
I know.
is this
I think
this
this
is too small. I have not enough Bitcoin.
everybody's celebrating the halving, and I'm over here like, why are you celebrating? Go.
Bitcoin ETFs, cancel them. Let's have it in 10 years.
Only people who have too much Bitcoin are celebrating the halving.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm really glad we ended with that question because I love this. I had never heard it put in the words of freedom go up technology. I really love that we ended that way. It's a great little tagline for the future.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. I don't know. I think we talked over 2 hours. Somewhere it was really really cool. Thank you for hosting me, and thank you for listening so much to my stuff. It was a great honor to be on, and I definitely will have to have you on my show also. Like I would love to host you.
Definitely. I'd love to come. And I'm really glad that you came on the show and that you shared all like about your life and how you got into Bitcoin. That was all really fun to listen to, and that you let us into what you've been doing and how you got here. That's all really valuable because I mean, we all take a different paths and we can learn from each other's paths. So I'm really happy to have had you in the show. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dani.
We'll see you again soon. Maybe in person at a conference.
Yes, I hope so.
Alrighty.
You're in Bitcoin Prague?
Uh, I didn't plan on it, but maybe because I had a little girl, I hadn't had the opportunity to travel that much. But like now it's getting to a stage where I might be have the opportunity to participate in more in-person stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, hopefully.
Perfect.
Bye.